Winnipeg's waters. The skiffs they still roam, but voices aren't equal when decisions strike home.
The nets haul the bounty, a good catch they bring,
yet the weight of their say does not sweetly sing.
Out on the water, I cast my old line. The echoes of history in the ripples they shine.
But when the winds whisper, they tell a hard tale of who gets to speak and who's destined to fail. Oh, the lake's in motion, the fish swim and glide, but old lines on maps weigh heavy offside. The big and the small, a vote is the same, while the engine of progress can't always stake claim from licensing areas. The powers convene, though some shores are silent, their influence is keen.
The stocks move together across the wide blue, but local concerns overshadow the truth.
I see the old fishermen, their stories run deep in every faded line. The history they keep,
Women and men, they toil with the tide. Each wave tells a story of the strength we can find.
oh, the lake's in motion, the fish swim and glide, but old lines on maps weigh heavy offside.
The big and the small, a vote is the same,
While the engine of progress can't always stake claim, let the bells ring clear and the echoes resound. In the heart of our wild waters we'll reclaim the ground. Let the voices be heard, let's rise up as one. This fight's not over until it is won.
with each cast of the line, we'll weave our dream tight. Together we'll shine like stars in the night.
The past and the future will dance hand in hand. In the light of our vision, we'll take a bold stand.
Oh, the lake's in motion,
The fish swim and glide, but old lines on maps weigh heavy offside.
the big and the small, a vote is the same,
While the engine of progress can't always stake claim. So here we are standing on the shores of our faith, with the voices of many and decisions we create. For the way it is now sustain in unity's chorus. We'll dance in the rain.
Empowering Economic Drivers, Re-Evaluating Representation in Lake Winnipeg Commercial Fishery Governance. By Bill Buckels, Lake Winnipeg Commercial Fisher. Executive Summary. The current governance structure of the Lake Winnipeg Commercial Fishery, while historically rooted in community licensing areas, CLAs, disproportionately empowers smaller producers and even communities with significantly reduced or inactive fishing sectors in decision-making processes. This population-based representation, rather than one weighted by economic contribution, impedes the ability of larger quota holders, who are the primary drivers of the fishery's economic engine, to effectively participate in management decisions. Furthermore, the inherent transience of lake-wide fish stocks renders geographically fixed CLAs largely irrelevant to sound ecological management, suggesting that their continued prominence in governance is more a matter of political expediency than economic or ecological rationale. This white paper argues for a fundamental shift toward a representation model that acknowledges and empowers the economic drivers of the fishery, ensuring sustainable practices while maximizing economic benefits for the province and its fishing communities. We will explore various alternative models, comparing their strengths and weaknesses in achieving a more economically rational and ecologically sound governance framework.
Lake Winnipeg's waters, the skiffs they still roam, but voices aren't equal when decisions strike home.
The nets haul the bounty, a good catch they bring,
Yet the weight of their sin
does not sweetly sing.
out on the water, I cast my old line. The echoes of history in the ripples they shine.
But when the winds whisper, they tell a hard tale of who gets to speak and who's destined to fail.
All the lakes in motion, the fish swim and glide, but old lines on maps way heavy offside. The big and the small, a vote is the same, while the engine of progress can't always stay clean. From licensing areas, the powers convene, though some shores are silent, their influence is keen.
The stocks move together across the wide blue, but local concerns overshadow the truth.
in every faded line, the history they keep.
Women and men, they toil with the tide. Each wave tells a story of the strength we confide. All the lakes in motion,
The fish swim and glide, but old lines on maps weigh heavy offside. The big and the small, a vote is the same, while the engine of progress can't always stake claim. Let the bells ring clear and the echoes resound. In the heart of our waters, we'll reclaim the ground. Let the voices be heard. Let's rise up as one. This fight's not over until it is won. With each cast of the line, we'll weave our dream tight. Together we'll shine like stars in the night.
the past and the future will dance hand in hand in the light of our vision. We'll take a bold stand.
All the lakes in motion, the fish swim and glide, but old lines on maps weigh heavy offside. The big and the small, a vote is the same, while the engine of progress can't always stake claim. So here we are standing on the shores of our fate, with the voices of many and decisions we create. For the way it is now, it's the way we'll sustain. In unity's chorus, we'll dance in the
Introduction. The Lake Winnipeg commercial fishery represents a significant economic and cultural asset for Manitoba. However, its current governance framework, heavily influenced by historical community licensing areas, presents a paradox. While the larger quota holders generate the majority of the fishery's economic value through their higher production volumes, their influence in decision-making is often diluted by a representation system that grants significant weight to smaller producers and communities, even those with substantially diminished or dormant fishing activity. This structure prioritizes population-based representation linked to geographically defined CLAs, often at the expense of acknowledging the economic realities and the transient nature of the resource being managed. This white paper posits that the continued reliance on CLAs as a primary basis for representation in fishery governance is fundamentally flawed. Fish stocks within Lake Winnipeg are dynamic and move across these arbitrarily defined community boundaries. Consequently, management decisions based on localized community interests, rather than lake-wide ecological and economic considerations, can lead to suboptimal outcomes. Furthermore, the overrepresentation of areas with limited current economic contribution from the fishery can hinder the implementation of efficient and economically sound management strategies advocated by those with the largest stake in the industry's success. This paper will delve into the economic and ecological irrationality of the current system and propose alternative representation models that better align decision-making power with economic contribution and ecological realities. Critique of the current representation system based on community licensing areas. The foundational principle of the current representation system appears to be rooted in the historical distribution of fishing activity across various communities surrounding Lake Winnipeg. While this approach may have served to ensure local participation in the early stages of the fisheries development, its continued dominance in governance presents several critical shortcomings in the context of modern economic realities and ecological understanding. 1. Disconnection from economic contribution. The most significant flaw in the current system is its weak correlation with economic output. Larger quota holders, through their greater harvesting capacity, generate the bulk of the revenue, employment, and overall economic benefit derived from the Lake Winnipeg fishery. However, their voting power and representation in decision-making bodies are often equivalent to that of smaller producers or representatives from CLAs with minimal current fishing activity. This disconnect creates a situation where those who bear the greatest economic risk and contribute the most to the industry's success can be outvoted by those with a comparatively smaller economic stake. Rationale. Sound economic governance necessitates that those who contribute most significantly to the economic well-being of an industry have a commensurately influential voice in its management. The current population-based system, tied to CLAs, fails to reflect this fundamental principle, potentially leading to decisions that prioritize social equity based on historical presence over economic efficiency and growth. Reference. Data on landings and revenue generated by different quota holding categories would empirically demonstrate the disproportionate economic contribution of larger producers. 2. Overrepresentation of diminished or inactive fishing sectors. Some CLAs may have experienced significant reductions in their active fishing population due to quota sales, alternative economic opportunities, or other factors. Despite their reduced economic contribution to the current fishery, these areas often retain a level of representation in governance bodies that is disproportionate to their present-day economic impact. This overrepresentation can lead to decision-making influenced by historical considerations rather than the current realities and future potential of the fishery. Rationale. Allocating significant decision-making power to regions with minimal current economic engagement in the fishery can result in policies that do not necessarily serve the best interests of the active participants or the overall economic health of the industry. It can also lead to a focus on social support mechanisms rather than strategies for optimizing sustainable harvesting and economic returns. Reference. Data on the number of active licenses and landings per CLA over time would illustrate the varying levels of current fishing activity across different regions. 3. Irrelevance to lake-wide stock management. Fish populations within Lake Winnipeg are not confined to the arbitrary boundaries of CLAs. Species migrate across the lake, influenced by environmental factors such as water temperature, nutrient availability, and spawning grounds that often span multiple community areas. Attempting to manage these transient stocks based on localized CLA interests is ecologically unsound and can lead to fragmented and ineffective management strategies. Rationale. Effective fisheries management requires a holistic, ecosystem-based approach that considers the entire lake as a single interconnected system. Decisions driven by the parochial interests of individual CLAs can undermine the implementation of lake-wide conservation measures and sustainable harvesting practices. Reference. Scientific literature on the movement patterns and population dynamics of key commercial fish species in Lake Winnipeg would support the argument for lake-wide management. For politicization of resource management, The continued emphasis on CLAs and fishery governance often introduces a strong element of political consideration into what should be primarily an economic and ecological endeavor. Decisions may be influenced by the need to appease specific community interests rather than by sound economic principles or scientific evidence regarding stock sustainability. This politicization can hinder the adoption of necessary but potentially unpopular management measures. Rationale: while community well-being is undoubtedly important, the primary goal of fishery governance should be to ensure the long-term sustainability and economic viability of the resource for the benefit of all stakeholders and the province as a whole. Allowing political considerations tied to localized community interests to outweigh economic and ecological imperatives can lead to suboptimal outcomes. Reference: analysis of past management decisions and the debates surrounding them might reveal instances where political considerations related to CLAs influenced outcomes.
The winds of change blow on Lake Winnipeg. A new way of leading will find its new place.
The work on the water, the value they make, will earn stronger voices for the future's own sake.
Oh, the lake will thrive onward, its bounty to share, with all stakeholders join in thoughtful repair. For balance and wisdom will guide every plan, in power and progress for all of our plans.
No longer held back by boundaries of old, the lake as a whole, the new story be told.
From tiered representing to council so wide, a stronger foundation, Lake Winnipeg's tide. Oh, the lake will thrive onward, its bounty to share, with all stakeholders join in thoughtful repair. For balance and wisdom will guide every plan, in power and progress for all of our clans. From fishermen's echoes to paddler songs, the heartbeat of nature where everyone belongs.
Ice melts in the spring like the chains of the past. In unity we grow, our resolve holding fast.
Oh, the lake will thrive onward, its bounty to share, with all stakeholders join in thoughtful repair. For balance and wisdom will guide every plan, endeavor in progress for all of our clan. The sun sets so low, casting gold on the waves, as stories are told of the lives that it saves.
In the moonlight we gather with hearts open wide, with harmony flowing like a deep changing tide.
Oh, together we rise like the waters we trust.
In this dance with the lake, it's our love that we must.
Each challenge we face, we'll weather the storm.
With passion ignited, we'll keep each
its bounty to share, with all stakeholders joined in thoughtful repair. For balance and wisdom will guide every plan, empowering progress for all of our clans. So lift up your voices, let the echoes resound. Together we'll flourish as new roots are found. With Lake Winnipeg shining, we'll forge a new way. A brighter tomorrow starts right here today.
Alternative representation models focused on economic contribution and ecological realities. To address the shortcomings of the current system, several alternative representation models warrant consideration. These models aim to empower the economic drivers of the fishery and facilitate more ecologically sound management practices. 1. Quota-based representation. This model would allocate representation in governance bodies proportionally to the amount of quota held by individual license holders or fishing entities. Those holding larger quotas, and thus contributing more significantly to the fishery's economic output, would have a greater voice in decision-making. Strengths. Directly links decision-making power to economic stake, incentivizes efficient and productive fishing practices, and empowers those with the greatest financial interest in the long-term sustainability of the resource. Weaknesses. Could potentially marginalize smaller producers if not implemented carefully, may require mechanisms to ensure consideration of social and community impacts beyond pure economic output, and might need safeguards to prevent undue influence by a few very large quota holders. 2. Value-based representation. Similar to quota-based representation, this model could allocate voting power based on the landed value of fish harvested by individual license holders or entities. This approach acknowledges the economic contribution more directly, as different species have varying market values. Strengths. Directly reflects economic contribution, accounts for the varying value of different harvested species, and incentivizes the harvesting of higher value species, potentially maximizing economic returns. Weaknesses. Similar to quota-based representation, could potentially marginalize smaller producers and might require mechanisms to ensure broader considerations beyond pure economic value. 3. Tiered representation. This model could establish different tiers of representation based on quota holdings or landed value, ensuring that all active fishers have a voice while granting greater influence to those with a more significant economic contribution. This could involve a base level of representation for all license holders, with additional representation allocated based on quota volume or value. Strengths. Balances the need for broad participation with the recognition of economic drivers, ensures that smaller producers have a voice while empowering larger contributors, and can be designed with thresholds and ratios to mitigate the risk of undue influence by any single group. Weaknesses. Requires careful calibration of tiers and representation ratios to ensure a fair balance and avoid the creation of new power imbalances. For Lake-wide Stakeholder Council, this model will move away from CLA-based representation altogether and establish a council comprised of representatives from various stakeholder groups across the entire lake, including large and small producers, processors, indigenous communities, based on treaty rights and traditional knowledge, separate from CLA considerations, recreational fishers, and environmental organizations. Representation could be weighted based on factors such as economic contribution, historical dependence, and ecological expertise. Strengths. Facilitates a holistic, lake-wide perspective on management, incorporates diverse knowledge and interests, and moves away from the potentially divisive influence of geographically fixed CLAs on the management of transient fish stocks. Weaknesses. requires careful design to ensure equitable representation of all stakeholder groups and to prevent any single group from dominating decision-making. Reaching consensus among diverse interests can be challenging. 5. Hybrid models. Combining elements of the above models could offer a more nuanced approach. For example, a system could incorporate a base level of representation for all active license holders, with additional weighting based on quota holdings or landed value, and dedicated representation for indigenous communities based on their distinct rights and interests. Recommendations. Based on the analysis presented, a fundamental shift away from a representation system primarily based on community licensing areas is necessary to foster a more economically rational and ecologically sound governance framework for the Lake Winnipeg commercial fishery. We recommend a move towards models that prioritize economic contribution and lake-wide ecological considerations. Specifically, we propose a phased transition towards a tiered representation model or a hybrid model that incorporates elements of quota-based or value-based weighting alongside a base level of representation for all active license holders. Furthermore, the establishment of a lake-wide stakeholder council with carefully balanced representation from various groups, including weighted representation for economic drivers, is crucial for ensuring a holistic and sustainable approach to resource management. This transition should be guided by the following principles. Empowering economic drivers. Representation should be weighted to reflect the economic contribution of different stakeholders, ensuring that those who generate the most value have a significant voice in decision-making. Lake-wide ecological management. Governance structures should prioritize the management of fish stocks on a lake-wide basis, recognizing their transient nature and the interconnectedness of the ecosystem, moving away from geographically restrictive CLA-based thinking for stock management. Ensuring participation. All active fishers should have a voice in governance, albeit with a weighting that reflects their economic stake. Incorporating diverse perspectives. The governance framework should include mechanisms for incorporating the knowledge and perspectives of indigenous communities, recreational fishers, and environmental organizations. Transparency and accountability. The decision-making process should be transparent and accountable to all stakeholders. Conclusion. The continued reliance on community licensing areas as the primary basis for representation in the Lake Winnipeg commercial fishery governance is anachronistic and counterproductive in the face of modern economic realities and ecological understanding. By prioritizing population-based representation linked to geographically fixed areas, the current system inadvertently marginalizes the economic drivers of the fishery and hinders the implementation of effective lake-wide management strategies. A paradigm shift towards representation models that acknowledge and empower economic contribution, coupled with a lake-wide perspective on stock management, is essential to ensure the long-term sustainability and economic prosperity of the Lake Winnipeg commercial fishery for the benefit of all Manitobans. The adoption of tiered or hybrid representation models, alongside a robust lake-wide stakeholder council, offers a pathway towards a more equitable, economically rational, and ecologically sound future for this vital resource. References: Re-evaluating representation in Lake Winnipeg commercial fishery governance. 1. Manitoba Fishery Regulations, 1987. Province of Manitoba. This document outlines the current legal framework for fisheries management in Manitoba, including regulations specific to Lake Winnipeg and quota allocations. 2. Lake Winnipeg Fisher Co-op Enhancement Program, FCP, documentation. Manitoba Government/Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Reports, program guidelines, and evaluations related to the FCP, which often reference community licensing areas in the context of quota management and community support. 3. Reports and publications on Lake Winnipeg commercial fishery history and management. Search for academic papers, government reports, and industry publications detailing the historical development of the fishery, the introduction of quota systems, and the role of community licensing areas. Specific authors or titles are difficult to predict without a targeted search, but examples include publications from the Manitoba Department of Natural Resources and Northern Development, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, and university researchers. For data on landings, revenue, and active licenses in the Lake Winnipeg commercial fishery, Manitoba Department of Natural Resources and Northern Development/Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation, FFMC. Statistical data illustrating the economic contribution of different scales of fishing operations and the distribution of fishing activity across different regions of the lake. Specific datasets or reports would need to be requested or identified through government or FFMC resources. 5. Scientific literature on fish stock dynamics and movement patterns in Lake Winnipeg. Peer-reviewed scientific publications focusing on the biology, ecology, and movement of commercially important fish species in Lake Winnipeg. This would provide evidence for the transient nature of fish stocks and the need for lake-wide management approaches. Search databases like Google Scholar, Web of Science, and academic library catalogs using keywords like Lake Winnipeg Fish Movement, Lake Winnipeg Stock Assessment, and Walleye Migration Manitoba. 6. Analysis of Lake Winnipeg fishery governance structures and stakeholder engagement. Reports or academic papers analyzing the current governance framework, the roles and influence of different stakeholder groups, and any documented challenges or inequities in the decision-making process. This might include analyses of advisory committees, co-op structures, and government consultations. 7. Comparative studies of fisheries governance in other large lake ecosystems. Research papers or reports examining alternative fisheries governance models implemented in other large lake systems facing similar ecological and economic challenges. This could provide insights into best practices and potential models for Lake Winnipeg. Examples might include studies on the Great Lakes fisheries or large lakes in other parts of Canada or the world. 8. Indigenous consultation reports and agreements related to Lake Winnipeg fisheries. Documents outlining consultations with Indigenous communities regarding their treaty rights, traditional knowledge, and participation in the management of Lake Winnipeg fisheries. These would be crucial for understanding the distinct rights and perspectives that need to be considered in any revised governance framework, separate from CLA-based considerations. 9. Economic impact assessments of the Lake Winnipeg commercial fishery. Studies quantifying the economic contribution of the fishery to the province, including employment, revenue generation, and multiplier effects. These would provide data to support the argument for prioritizing economic drivers in governance. 10. Reports on quota transfer activity and ownership concentration in the Lake Winnipeg commercial fishery. Data and analysis on the trends in quota transfers and the resulting distribution of quota ownership, which can highlight potential disparities within and between community licensing areas. Note, accessing some of the specific data and reports mentioned above might require direct requests to the relevant government agencies, Manitoba Department of Natural Resources and Northern Development, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation, university research departments, or archival institutions. Publicly available online databases may also contain some relevant information.
Winds of change blow on Lake Winnipeg's face. A new way of leading will find its new place.
The work on the water, the value they make, will earn stronger voices for the future's own sake.
Oh, the lake will thrive onward, its bounty to share with all stakeholders. Join in thoughtful repair, for balance and wisdom will guide every plan, and guiding progress for all of our plans. No longer held back by boundaries of old, the lake as a whole, the new story be told.
From tiered representing to counsel so wide, a stronger foundation, Lake Winnipeg's tide.
Oh, the lake will thrive onward, its bounty to share with all stakeholders join in thoughtful repair.
For balance and wisdom will guide every plan, and progress for all of our clan.
From fishermen's echoes to paddlers' songs, the heartbeat of nature, where everyone belongs.
Ice melts in the spring like the chains of the past. In unity we grow, our resolve holding fast.
Oh, the lake will thrive onward, its bounty to share with all stakeholders join in thoughtful repair.
For balance and wisdom will guide every plan, empowering progress for all of our clan.
The sun sets so low, casting gold on the waves, as stories are told of the lives that it saves.
In the moonlight we gather, with hearts open wide, with harmony flowing like a deep changing tide.
Oh, together we rise like the waters we trust.
In this dance with the lake, it's our love that we must.
Each challenge we face, we'll weather the storm.
With passion ignited, we'll keep each other warm.
Oh, the lake will thrive onward, its bounty to share with all stakeholders joined in thoughtful repair.
For balance and wisdom will guide every plan, and pay and progress for all of our clan.
So lift up your voices, let the echoes resound. Together we'll flourish as new roots are found.
With Lake Winnipeg shining, we'll forge a new way, a brighter tomorrow.